few years ago, I finished speaking to a group of men when a man named Adam came up to share his testimony with me. He told me he had spent some time in prison. He didn't tell me what he did to be convicted. I didn't ask. He told me, though, that when he went into prison, he was illiterate, couldn't read or write. Now, that's not that unusual. In fact, about 70% of inmates would be considered illiterate. But there was another prisoner in that prison who was a believer, met Adam, knew that Adam couldn't read, and offered to teach Adam how to read. Adam accepted the invitation, and this believer taught Adam to read by using just the Gospel of Mark, the New Testament account of the life of Jesus. And so Adam learned to read by reading the Gospel of Mark from beginning to end, again and again and again. He read these stories about Jesus. And here's what happened. After enough time, he didn't just learn to read about Jesus, he became a follower of Jesus. Adam surrendered his life to Christ. He became a Christian and was baptized there in prison. He's telling me the story. He tells me that when he gets out of prison, he finds a little church in this small town where he lives. And things seem to be going okay for him. He can't find work. He's having a hard time finding a job, but he was growing in his faith, and he had a community of believers. And then, well, there were some people in the church who found out about his past and had a problem with him being at that church. There was one family in particular, kind of a prominent family, longtime church members, one of the biggest givers in the church, who said to the pastor, hey, look, either Adam needs to find a new place to worship or we're going to find a new place to worship. And there were some other families that were rumored to be going that same direction, and Adam thought maybe it's best if I just leave. I'm not trying to cause problems in this church. I don't want to create a mess for this pastor to clean up. Maybe I should just go. And Adam was dealing with a question. That church was wrestling with a question. That pastor needed to answer a question that I want us to focus on this Christmas Eve. And here's the question. It's the question of Christmas. Who did Jesus come for? Who did Jesus come for? Did he come for some people, or did he really come for all people? The last couple of months as a church, we've been studying the Gospel of Mark, that same gospel that Adam read again and again when he was in prison. And what we've seen in the Gospel of Mark is that Jesus had a heart for all people, not just a select group of people, but for all people. In fact, at the end of the Gospel of Mark, before Jesus ascends into heaven, he gives his followers an assignment. He gives them a mission, and he uses the word all several times. This is right at the end of his life, Mark 16, verse 15, Jesus says to his followers, go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation. Everybody's included. Nobody gets left out of this good news of great joy. In fact, that same word all that ends his life on earth was also used at the beginning of his life on earth. In Luke chapter 2, verse 10, an angel shows up to speak to a group of shepherds, and the angel says, I bring you good news of great joy that will be for all the people, all the people. And I would just submit to you that word all, 3 letters, short little word, makes all the difference this Christmas. It matters. It matters to anyone who's ever felt like they're on the outside looking in. It matters to anyone who's ever wondered, does God really want me? It matters to anyone who directly or indirectly has been made to feel like they don't belong. And here's what Jesus does. He comes on the scene. He's born into this world, and from the beginning, He's handing out keys to people who had been locked out. See, a key represents access. A key represents belonging. A key represents that you're welcome, that you're wanted in, that you're free to come. And there are a lot of people, especially in that first Christmas, who would have been locked out, people who hadn't been given access, people the religious leaders had kept the doors shut on, and Jesus came and he starts handing out keys to people who'd never had keys before. And so that first Christmas, as we study it, we just find this message that Jesus came for all people. And one of the ways we see that in that first Christmas is that first Christmas was, well, it was kind of redneck, if you think about it. Kind of a redneck Christmas. Now, I know for some of you, like the term redneck feels maybe derogatory or a bit offensive. I promise you it's not. If you call a redneck, they're not going to be offended. It's a term of endearment. They're like, oh, thank you. That was so nice of you to call me a redneck. And I say that not as a redneck. I'm not accepted by this group. I'm not claimed by the rednecks, but I have tried to make some inroads with rednecks over the years. I I live on a farm where animals outnumber people. I wear boots on occasion, not often, but on occasion. I drive a truck. I sometimes listen to country music when the mood is right. It's not usually right, but sometimes it is, and I'll listen to country music. A number of years ago, I really wanted to try to make some inroads into the redneck community, and so I decided the best way to do that was to go ride a bull. And so I got to show this video maybe 5 or 6 years ago, but I'm gonna show it again, because if I ride a bull, it's gonna pop up 5 or 6 years. I didn't ride a bull to not tell the story. So here's me trying to be a redneck, riding a bull. Don't blink or you will miss it. Yeah, you can applaud because it makes you feel better about laughing, and it's hard to call that riding a bull. Like, even slowing it down, showing it 5 times is still not even 8 seconds. Like, I've honestly had sneezes that last longer than my bull ride did. That dog, that yappy dog, is just mocking me the whole time. Still shows up in my nightmares. Like, the rednecks don't claim me. But to be fair, there's people around here that have taken rednecking to a whole new level. A guy was telling me that he got his wife for Christmas a fur coat. Got her a fur coat. Sounds nice, except for the 2 adjectives that got put in front of fur coat. It was homemade. He got her a homemade fur coat. He made her fur coat, which begs the question, out of what? Coyote. He killed enough coyotes over a few year period to give his wife a homemade fur coat. And there's at least a dozen guys here right now who are like, what's wrong with that? Like, that seems romantic. It's not romantic. It's redneck. That's what that is. And so we have some of that around here, but there was a lot of that going on the first Christmas. And it's important for us to read the Christmas story through this lens because of what it teaches us. What we sometimes miss, it's not just that Jesus came, it's the way he came that gives us the message of Christmas. So with that in mind, look at the Christmas story again, Luke chapter 2, starting in verse 8. And there were shepherds living out in their fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. And an angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news of great joy that will be for all the people. Today in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord, and this will be a sign to you. You will find the baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger." And suddenly a great company of the heavenly host appeared with the angel, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace to those on whom his favor rests." And when the angels had left them and gone into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, "Let's go to Bethlehem, and let's see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has told us about." So they hurried off, and they found Mary and Joseph and the baby who was lying in a manger. And when they had seen him, they spread the word concerning what had been told them about this child, and all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds said to them. But Mary, verse 19 says, treasured all these things in her heart. And the shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all the things they had heard and seen, which were just as they had been told. It's a beautiful story, but we've heard it so many times that we sometimes forget just how rough it was. Like we sing about it like it's a picturesque moment. We sing, the cattle are lowing. But that means there's a cow in the delivery room. It's pretty redneck. And we read about Jesus being born to this poor, unwed teenage mother after they make a difficult journey to Bethlehem. It's a 70-mile journey, but he's not showing up first class, not even coach. Mary's riding on a donkey for 70 miles. She shows up pregnant to her fiance's hometown. There's no place for them to sleep. Like God didn't call ahead and say, my son's coming in tomorrow. Maybe you could get the presidential suite ready. He's going from the throne room of heaven, so let's get the penthouse ready for him. Like, no, Jesus, the creator of the universe, spends his first night in a space reserved for animals lying in a manger. Now, again, we read that in the Christmas story and it seems so beautiful, but it's a feeding trough. Smelly, dirty feeding trough. But what made that first Christmas especially redneck was the presence of the shepherds. They just keep showing up in Luke chapter 2. And it's the least likely people to get the keys. It's the least likely people to get an invitation to the first Christmas. Shepherds weren't allowed to testify in court. They weren't considered trustworthy in that way. Shepherds couldn't enter the temple. The religious leaders considered shepherds to be unclean. So they weren't even allowed to worship. And yet they're the ones who get the key to that first Christmas. They lived on the margins of society, and yet they're all over the Christmas story. And so we can just forget how rough that first Christmas was, partly because of the way that we celebrate Christmas. We decorate our houses, we put up lights, and we listen to music, and we light Christmas candles that have like the smells of Christmas, and it's like apple, cinnamon, and pine trees. And I saw this one candle that was for sale, and it said on it, I didn't get to smell it, but it said on it, nativity scented. It wasn't. I know it wasn't, because that means it would smell like wet animals. If there was a line of candles that were really the smells of Christmas, it would be like shepherd sweat and dirty donkey and camel dung. Like, that's the way it really was. And there's a deep theological significance in all of that. Like, we step away from that story and we say, okay, why? Why did God not just leave heaven and come to a palace on earth? Like, why did he go so low? There's actually a theological term for this. The term is Kinosis. It's the theological explanation for the redneck Christmas. It comes from Philippians chapter 2, where it talks about Jesus emptying himself completely, making himself, Philippians 2 says, nothing. It's not that he just went from heaven to earth. He went from heaven to the lowest place on earth. Why? It's because he was making a statement that it's for all people. What we see in the circumstances surrounding the birth of Jesus, the truth of Luke chapter 2, verse 10, that this is for everyone. It's not just for the well-educated and the well-behaved and the well-dressed and the well-thought of. It's not just for those people with good reputations and healthy families. Like, Jesus was born in a stable and he was announced to shepherds and laid in a manger. From the very beginning, what was being made clear to all of humanity is that no matter who you are, no matter what you've done, no matter what you look like or where you're from, Jesus is for you. The circumstances around that first Christmas are shouting to some of you who need to hear this. Jesus came for you. God so loved you that he gave his only son. You are included in this. Now, the challenge is that even though Jesus is a gift that's for everyone, he sometimes gets packaged in a way that leaves a lot of people out. There's some things like this. I was reading about some gifts that should be for everybody, but they get packaged in a way that most people don't get to be included. I have a few examples up here with me. This is a bottle of water. It's called Bling H2O, and this bottle of water is $75. It's the cheapest that they offer in this line of bottled water. It goes up to $1,500 a bottle. You can get it on eBay if you hurry. And I was reading the ad for this Bling H2O. Here's the ad. Bling H2O is not for everyone, just for those that bling. Ordinary bottled water is for ordinary people, but for those who have a taste for the finer things, Bling H2O may be the perfect thirst quencher. It tastes like water. It's water in a $75 bottle. It's something that should be for everybody, but it gets packaged in a way that it's only for a select few. I've got another example up here with me. This is Renova toilet paper. It's black toilet paper, Renova toilet paper. Here's what the packaging, or here's what the advertisement says. It's elegant, sophisticated, rebellious, eternally fashionable. Black toilet paper isn't for everyone, but it is synonymous with sophistication and style. How much for one roll of Renova black toilet paper? $21.99. That is what you call flushing money down a toilet. It's something that should be for everyone, but it gets packaged in a way that leaves a lot of people out. And this is what religion had done with God. It had packaged God up in such a way that a lot of people weren't being included. And this is what the church oftentimes has done with the good news of the gospel. We say it's for everyone, but then we package Jesus in a way that tends to leave a lot of people out. And we look at people, sometimes the way the shepherds or the religious leaders look at those shepherds, and we say, well, Jesus is for all people, but not you, and not here, and not with that past, and not with that addiction, and not with that divorce, not with those clothes, not with those politics, not with that record. And every time we do that, we're not protecting Jesus, we're betraying him. Because he was born in a barn, and he was laid in a feeding trough, and he was announced to shepherds, and he was making a statement before he could even say a word: I've come for all people. I haven't come for the healthy, I've come for the sick. I didn't come for those who have it all put together, but for those who are fallen apart. I didn't come for people who've deserved it and earned it. I came for people who are desperate for it. Now, whether you know it or not, you're sick and life isn't always put together and you're desperate for something. Jesus said, I've come for you. I've come for you. And the circumstances around his birth prove it. One of my favorite lines from a Christmas carol that we sang just a few minutes ago from O Holy Night says this. I love this. It says, he appeared and the soul felt its worth. He appeared, he showed up, and we know that we're loved. When Jesus shows up, we recognize how God sees us, that he so loved the world, he gave his only son, that there's nothing that could separate us from his love. And so in the time where we can often struggle with feelings of worthlessness, like we compare ourselves to other people, and a lot of times our worth gets determined by what we can achieve and accomplish, it's physical appearance, it's talents. Jesus says, no, let me tell you what determines your worth. Let me tell you where you can find your identity. It's in the Christmas story. It's the lengths that God went to when he came to earth. And so it's not just that Jesus was born into this world, it's the circumstances around his birth. It's that, again, the theological term, kenosis. It's not just that there's the incarnation, it's the depth of the incarnation. It shows us, it's Jesus saying there's no distance I won't travel, there's no pain I won't experience, there's no lengths I won't go to for you. And so Adam, reading through the Gospel of Mark in his prison cell, begins to see the kinds of people Jesus handed out keys to. And he begins to ask, maybe that's true for me too. And again, these are the first words he's ever read. He opens up to Mark chapter 1, and he reads about Jesus saying yes to a man who's unclean. Mark chapter 1, verse 40, a man with leprosy came to Jesus and begged him on his knees, if you're willing, you can make me clean. And Jesus was indignant. That word also translated, he was full of passion or compassion. And he reached out his hand and he touched the man. I am willing, he said, be clean. Leprosy was a death sentence. Leprosy made it so that everybody around you would say no to you. Leprosy locked all the doors. You couldn't go home. You couldn't go to worship. You couldn't be in the community. And so this guy shows up and he says to Jesus, if you're willing. It's so interesting to me because you would think he would say something like, well, if you're capable, if you can. But he seems to know that Jesus can. And so he says to Jesus, if you want to. And Jesus says, yes, I want to. And Jesus touches the leper. Nobody touched lepers. But when Jesus did, he's handing the keys back to this man's life. He's unlocking the door. Adam reads this in his prison cell, and he sees who Jesus said yes to. He flips over to Mark chapter 2, and he sees that Jesus said yes to the outcast. Verses 15 and 17, when Jesus was having dinner at Levi's house, many tax collectors and sinners were eating with him, eating with Jesus and his disciples, for there were many who followed him. And when the teachers of the law, when these religious leaders who were Pharisees saw Jesus eating with the sinners and tax collectors, they asked Jesus' disciples, why does he include them? Why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners? And on hearing this, Jesus said to them, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners. And the religious leaders like, why is he giving them keys? The door's supposed to be locked to people like that. Tax collectors were traitors. They extorted their own people. They were hated and despised. Sinners in this passage is like this catch-all phrase, catch-all term for people who couldn't figure out how to follow the rules. People who'd made a mess of their lives, who'd made bad choices. And the religious leaders looked at those kinds of people and they said, they don't belong. They're not welcome here. And Jesus says, they're who I came for. He didn't just tolerate them, he ate with them. He didn't just accept them, he invited them into his life, made them his friends. Jesus said yes to the sinful. And he called them to repentance, called them to life change, offered them a new beginning, but he loved them. Adam's reading these stories in his prison cell, and he thinks, well, maybe that's just the beginning of Jesus' life. Maybe that's just how it started. And so he flips to the end of the Gospel of Mark, to Mark 14, tells the story of Peter denying Jesus 3 times. This is Peter, the disciple who promised he'd never leave Jesus, who swore he'd die for Jesus, but he just fails spectacularly when it matters most. And now Jesus shows up after the resurrection, and Jesus doesn't write Peter off. He doesn't say to Peter, hey, you blew it. I'm locking you out. You're done. Jesus doesn't cancel Peter and then post about it, blog about it on the internet, trying to turn as many people against Peter as possible. Instead, he seeks Peter out and he restores him. And he doesn't just forgive Peter, he pulls out the keys and says to Peter, here's the keys to the early church. Jesus said yes to failure. And Adam reads enough of those stories in the Gospel of Mark and he thinks, maybe Jesus says yes to me too. I was at the mall a couple days ago. I was by myself doing some last minute shopping because, that's what I do. And it was crowded, lots of people at the mall. And over the sound system, they played a familiar Christmas hymn, "Oh, Come All Ye Faithful." And I just found myself listening to this hymn and watching the people. And I thought to myself, okay, yeah, like that's the invitation. Oh, come all ye faithful. But it's not just that. Like, oh, come all ye faithful, but also, oh, come all ye broken. Oh, come all ye faithful, but also, oh, come all ye lonely. Oh, come all ye guilty. Oh, come all ye weary. Oh, come all ye desperate. Come all ye faithful, but also, like, come all ye unfaithful. You're invited too. You get a key too. And I know that's hard for some of you to receive. Like you've been told no enough times that you've kind of internalized rejection. You kind of accept that verdict for yourself. You think Jesus doesn't want to have anything to do with you, but he's holding out a key. He's been holding it out your whole life. And maybe this Christmas is the Christmas where you say, okay, I believe it. I believe he says yes to me, and I'm going to say yes to him. I don't want to forget to tell you about what happened to Adam. After being in prison, he tries to get plugged into this little church in this small town. Again, some of the people in the church, they weren't having it, and they go to the pastor and say, either Adam goes or we go, putting a lot of pressure on that pastor. And one Sunday night after the pastor finished preaching, but before church dismissed, the pastor called Adam out of the congregation and asked him to come up front. And Adam, as he's telling me the story, he says, I knew what was going to happen. I knew what was going to happen. He had found out about my crimes. He was going to tell everyone what happened. He was going to make me leave. And so Adam makes his way to the front with his head down. He's embarrassed and ashamed over what was going to happen. And there were some people in the service who wanted Adam to leave, but this is awkward, and they wish the pastor would have just done this quietly instead of making a whole deal out of it, but still, they were glad it was happening. It needed to happen. Adam gets to the front. Pastor says he needs to talk to the church about a decision he's made. He explained that since being released, Adam had not been able to find a job, and the pastor said, I brought Adam up here because I wanted to offer him a job. Adam, I'd like to hire you to take care of our church facilities. And the pastor reached into his pocket, he pulled out a set of keys, extra set of church keys, and said, Adam, you're going to need these to open and close the church on Sundays. And as Adam is telling me this story, like tears are just running down his cheeks, and I'll never forget what he said to me. Here's what he said. He said, it was the first time I had ever had my own key to anything in my entire life. That is the message of Christmas. That is the gospel. I should mention where I met Adam. I wasn't speaking at a prison. I was actually speaking at a pastor's conference. Adam had been given the keys to that church 6 years earlier, but recently he had been named the new pastor of that little church in that small town where every week he stands up and he preaches the good news of great joy, and he makes sure everyone knows it's for you too. It's for all people. One thing I have long loved about this church is that it's for all people. It's for shepherds and kings alike. So you may be redneck, you may be romantic, you might be a romantic redneck. You may be single, you may be married, you may be single and wishing you were married, and you may be married and wishing you were single. You might be divorced or widowed, you might be living on food stamps or living off a trust fund, you might have your PhD, or you might be working on your GED. Whatever your story is. Whoever you are, wherever you're from, no matter what you've done, Christmas is for you. So here's what I want us to do. I just want us to take a moment and bow our heads, close our eyes. Go ahead and do that where you sit. And just take a deep breath. Inhale. Exhale. Just for a moment, set aside the busyness of the season. And with your eyes closed, see the stable in the back of the inn. It's just a shed, really, or maybe even a small cave about the size of a single garage, not what you would expect for a king. And you smell the odor of the animals and the hay, and of the shepherds too. They haven't bathed in weeks. And you hear the sheep and the goats, and you hear a baby crying. And you see the scene, and you just let it take your breath away. You see the new father, a strong carpenter, used to cutting down his own trees to work with, but he's so gentle with this new baby. And see Mary, she seems so young. And she looks exhausted as she lies down, but she also has that smile as she cuddles with her new baby. And see God in the flesh. See the baby Jesus. What would it have been like to hold him, to touch his brow and think he will one day wear a crown of thorns? To see those soft cheeks and to know that one day a soldier will spit in his face? To see those tiny shoulders and know that they will one day carry a cross and with it every sin that you have ever committed? And you see those tiny hands, they will do wonderful things. They will touch the lepers and heal children. They will make blind to see. And they will be nailed to a cross. And I want you to say 4 words to yourself. He came for me.